The Denver Broncos are back off the bye week and now shift their sights on the Tennessee Titans. Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett says if the Broncos can be better on offense in this one particular area, they will have success during this 9-game stretch. Plus, there's some injury updates on the Broncos offensive line. Edge rusher here that could impact their status for Sunday's game against the Titans. And newcomers, excited, new faces, new places. Jacob Martin and Chase Edmonds ready to make an impact for this Broncos team. We dive into that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome into a brand new episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos country for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you watch us on YouTube. We appreciate you so much. Do us a favor, if you've not done so already, hit that subscribe or that follow button down below so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, coverage every single day, all year long, whether they win, whether they lose, whether they tie, or whether they go in the bye. We got you covered here. Sayre, my friend, the Broncos back in action here for a second half stretch. These next 9 games will be very challenging from an optics standpoint from the opponents that they'll have to face, and they'll have to do a lot of things right in order to get there. And Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett kind of outlaid the blueprint a little bit as to the biggest area they need to be better, especially in the offensive side of the ball.
That's right. I mean, the third down offense, Cody, he highlighted it, and rightfully so. The Broncos rank almost second to last in the NFL this season in third down conversion rate, 29.2%. That simply has to be better. And obviously the reason for it is because if you're converting third downs, well, you're extending drives. You're giving yourself more opportunity to score, which the Broncos just haven't been giving themselves that many opportunities to score, right? That's why they rank almost dead last. They improved over the bye week. They're 30th now instead of 32nd in points per game. So we're creeping our way up there, Cody. But man, it starts with that third down offense. If you can't convert on third down, well, you can't move the ball into scoring range. You can't get, your offense opportunities. So that's where the Broncos need to improve the most. Nathaniel Hackett, obviously aware of that. The Broncos working to fix that. We'll see what they can do against a tough Tennessee team here after the bye. It's not necessarily the best team to have to go against when you want to get right on third down, but certainly a great opportunity for Russell Wilson in this offense to do so.
Well, and I think a lot of too, right? We talk about third down success and efficiency. It's also so much, I think, as important that they're efficient on first down, second down, which is the primary thing. And often at times this season, the Broncos on 1st and 10, we've seen them become very pass happy to, their first series of the game. We expect it to really be a passing play. We don't really expect it to be a run play. And so when it's an incomplete pass or anything like that, it's 2nd and 10. What do we see on 2nd and 10? We see a handoff, a run on the inside. Okay, that brings up 3rd and 9 sometimes, 3rd and 8, 7, 6, 5, and maybe at best 3rd and 3, which has been a rarity. But even then, when Denver is getting in those situations right there, they're like pissing down their leg in a sense, right? They're just going backwards. And it doesn't help that periodically this season, they've gone backwards quite a bit on first down, second down, third down due to penalties. And that's something that Nathaniel Hackett said that it has to be better going forward, which in my opinion, Sayre, I look at penalties, you can try to avoid certain things, right? There's ones that are avoidable, like, taunting, unsportsmanlike conduct, things like that. You can avoid those. But it's like the things like false start, that's just a mental focus. That is something that is in the control of the players, the offense. They need to be able to do that a little bit more effectively. Holding's all about technique and being able not, grabbing a guy on the outside or pulling him on the inside when he's trying to run and chase a play. It's the small things that the Broncos have struggled with through the first half. And if they're better, they can build some rhythm off of these things specifically to maybe be a lot more efficient on third down.
And that's what Nathaniel Hackett talked about exactly at his Monday press conferences, building on the rhythm that was kind of established in Jacksonville. And look, it's not like the Broncos went out there and scored 40 points against Jacksonville, but the offense did look much better than it has in recent weeks. And I would say even over the last 2 games, we've seen better stretches from this offense. Even if you want to go back to that Chargers game, the first half of the Chargers game, So the Broncos have been having some measure of success offensively. It's just when they finally catch a rhythm, they're getting out of it too quickly. So Nathaniel Hackett, they need to be able to stay in rhythm like we saw, near the end of the first half with the touchdown drive, the Jerry Jeudy play, and really getting the ball back and driving back into scoring range almost, at the end of the first half there, coming out in the second half, and then obviously closing out the game. But there's just too much in between of these 3-and-outs, these weird, odd play sequencing where it's like the Broncos are either missing things or they're not on the same page or they're trying to get too cute when certain things are working. You have to find and establish that rhythm, and Nathaniel Hackett feels like they had something to build on there from that Jacksonville game.
Have to find a way to be consistent, right? And as cliche as it is, we're saying things like they got to be consistent, they got to do this. Like, this is the reality of football. Like, it's easy to say it, right? But it's harder to do it. And rightfully so. I think everybody in Broncos country, fans are like, hey, actions speak louder than words. They're going to wait to see it. But I also thought Hackett pointed out the importance that it really boils down to trust. Players trusting players, players trusting coaches, coaches trusting players as well, and coaches trusting coaches. I know I just said a lot of trust right there, but I think that is a huge thing as well. There has to be trust that's solidified almost at every single level, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You have to have that dynamic there, and if you don't, not saying that they haven't had that, but I'd say there's been so many moving parts, especially on the offensive line with all the injuries that have been going on. I think it's been really hard for the Broncos to truly find that rhythm and that balance, and so that's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing this upcoming Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. Do I expect perfection out of the gate? No, but I think it's reasonable for you and I and for Broncos country to say we want to see at least something that's better. We want to see it better than it has been. And I think people would be okay with that, right? Because at the end of the day, you're either going to win, you're going to lose, but you need to do some of these things that have been impacting you negatively. You need to do them better and avoid those things from taking over. And I think that'll be a huge key for this Broncos team with a 9-game stretch that features some very, very tough opponents, starting off with Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans. And speaking of Sunday's game against the Titans, the Broncos could be with some guys back from injury on the offense and defensive side of the ball. They'll be without a key player on the offensive line for quite some time. How might that impact the Broncos going forward? We dive deep into that and much more coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. And unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. And therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of the challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere, 100% online, and I've really loved taking advantage of BetterHelp the last 3.5 months. For me, this is a stressful job, traveling a lot, being on the road a lot. There's things that I need to work on in terms of balance in my life, being able to deal with certain things, and my therapist has done a tremendous job helping me identify things that I can do better to make my life a little bit easier on myself. And everyone deserves to feel their best, and BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. All you do is you fill out a form, you get matched to a therapist, and then from that point forward, if you feel like you and your therapist do not match well, you can request a new therapist anytime. It is that easy and simple for you. So get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. On the injury side of things, the Broncos are hoping to get a couple of key players back, but they'll also be without several key players as well against the Tennessee Titans in a tough AFC showdown. Thank you so much, Broncos country, for tuning in, making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts in audio format. Or you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to all things Denver Broncos here on the Locked On Broncos podcast. Sayre, let's get into some other things too. The Broncos are going to face a tough test this weekend against the Tennessee Titans. And the injury side of things, coming off the heels of the Bradley Chubb trade, the Broncos are optimistic that Baron Browning will return with the hip flexor injury that he's been doing, but our good friend Mike Kliss points out that it will be close. So there is a real chance that the Broncos against the Titans could be without Baron Browning. Randy Gregory, according to Kliss, is expected to miss 1 or 2 more games. So that means that's a tough test for a guy like Nick Bonito as a rookie, Jonathan Cooper, and Jacob Martin being thrown in, Jonathan Kongbo. What an interesting challenge here for the Broncos if, in fact, they are without Baron Browning this week.
Right. How about, Derrick Henry running at you full steam? And if Ryan Tannehill doesn't play, my goodness, you got to worry about the read option with a guy like Malik Willis out there, who's a very good runner as well. And that kind of just keeps you on your heels as an edge player, just kind of wondering what are the Titans going to run here? What are they going to do? Who's going to have the ball? Am I going to make the right read? All those different sort of things. So really going to be relying on those veteran linebackers, Alex Singleton, Josie Jewell, and then Jonas Griffith as well, relying on them for playing with instincts, attacking their gaps, making sure they tackle on first contact and don't miss tackles as well. And those defensive linemen on the interior are going to have to be stout at the point of attack. The Broncos need those guys, like we talked about in yesterday's episode, to really assert dominance on the defensive interior. Cody, I think that's going to be something that's huge to watch with this sort of injury. Even if Baron Browning does play, you want the Broncos to be able to utilize their edge rushers as rushers, not just you don't want them getting eaten alive by the run so badly that it affects their pass rush. So it's going to be interesting to see whatever combination they have out there. I think all of those guys that we mentioned, they're all going to play and they're all going to see a part in the rotation.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Especially against, I'd say, a physical team like Tennessee, right? Offensively, defensively, they are very, very physical. We just talked about the defensive side of the ball. We'll find out a little bit more this week from Jiro Averill. Maybe not necessarily his game plan, but how you limit a guy like Derrick Henry from going off and having a big game that he's had the last couple of weeks. He had a really good first half against the Chiefs. They went away in the second half. A couple of weeks ago, he had a 200-yard rushing game. He is big. He's fast. He is truly a freak of nature, and it'll be a big challenge for this Broncos team here. But now let's shift gears and flip it to the other side of the ball for Denver offensively. You take a look at the center position. Lloyd Cushenberry, Nathaniel Hackett said it to us in his Monday press conference that Lloyd Cushenberry is expected to miss some time here with the injury that he's dealing with the groin. So that means that Graham Glasgow will step in. Luke Wattenberg will get some reps in practice, but the team is going to roll with Graham Glasgow, who Hackett said did a really good job against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kind of to that point, though, Sayre, the question that I had, and I want to throw this to you and to anybody that's watching or listening, if Graham Glasgow is playing really good at center, right? And the biggest thing we've seen with Lloyd Cushenberry, he struggled with getting out physical. If he holds his own and doesn't get pushed back or doesn't end up on the ground as much as we've seen Lloyd Cushenberry, when Cushenberry's healthy, do you go back to him at that point if Glasgow's got the hot hand?
Cody, I wouldn't go back. I would stick with what's working. If Graham Glasgow comes in and he can become a, potential fixture at that position, obviously that's something you want to stick with. You've had communication issues there kind of all season. It's been one of those things that's been a pressing issue for the Denver Broncos, and really just being physical, being able to be, a more physical presence on the interior offensive line. I think that's going to be important. Communication is going to be important. Picking up pass protection is going to be super important. If Graham Glasgow is leading the charge of making that better, I would definitely stick with him for the rest of the season.
Well, and if the offensive line is playing much better, right, which, for me, it's going to be very interesting. We also found out about Cam Fleming. He's, as Nathaniel Hackett says, day to day, week to week, we're not quite sure, but that he is eager. Like Hackett said, he likes his demeanor. Part of me is still thinking, too, even if Calvin Anderson's playing really good football, I just don't see how you can go back to Cam Fleming when he really struggles in pass protection, where I feel as Calvin Anderson has been more flexible. Granted, it's a small sample size against the Jaguars, but he didn't have any moments in that game where he hurt the Broncos. He had good pass protection. He had good run blocking. So it's this is a tough decision. And I think ultimately it'll tell me and maybe be revealing to everybody in Broncos country how much of this is also on Butch Berry maybe having favoritism with certain guys, which as coaches, you sometimes see that. That's part of the game. But when it comes to who's playing better and who gives you a better chance to win, I honestly can't say that Cam Fleming gives the Broncos a better chance to win or to be successful on offense, more so than I feel about Calvin Anderson at left tackle.
And I agree with you on that. I think absolutely. And Calvin Anderson could be part of the future solution. So it's in your best interest to get him out there and get him those reps. We've seen him play really well at left tackle a number of times now. He had a good game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cody, I agree with you completely. The offensive line is one of those things where I think we are going to find out a lot more. If people didn't already have, foregone conclusions about Butch Berry, we're going to certainly have those piling up here after the bye week as we continue to see more and more guys get opportunities out there for the Broncos. And certainly you just hope at this point that they can find that right winning combo.
That's the hope, right? And, obviously hope is not a strategy in the National Football League. You just have to see it, and rightfully so. I think Broncos country's reserved. Actions speak louder than words, and they're waiting to see it more so than hearing it from the team, and I think that's fair, and I think that's the fans' point of view, and we certainly respect it here on Locked On Broncos. But Broncos country coming up here in just a moment. Sayre and I, we're going to dive deeper into the conversation about some newcomers here for this Broncos football team with Jacob Martin and Chase Edmonds. After a whirlwind being traded, are they ready to play this Sunday against the Tennessee Titans? We dive into that and much more coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about Prize Picks, the sponsor of today's episode, Locked On Broncos. And Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports done right. With the Prize Picks app, you choose 2 to 5 players that you're focused on heading into the week. And these players, they'll have a projection that's set by Prize Picks. And you simply choose whether or not they will have more or less than their Prize Picks projection, which could allow you to win 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. New faces in new places. That's the story for 2 new Denver Broncos who came over via the NFL trade deadline. Will they play this week against the Tennessee Titans? Thank you once again, Broncos country, for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day in your favorite audio podcasting platforms or whether you watch on YouTube. We appreciate you so much. Get involved in the conversation. Like the video on YouTube. Comment your Broncos analysis. Share your thoughts as well for the algorithm. We appreciate you so much. Sayre, new faces here being introduced to the Broncos this week. We were introduced to Jacob Martin, the new outside linebacker, and running back Chase Edmonds. I want to start with Edmonds here first, though, because on Monday, being introduced going from playing previously with the Arizona Cardinals, signing a deal with the Miami Dolphins for 2 years, and not being utilized as much as we thought he would be in Miami. Now he's a Denver Bronco, and I feel like he maybe kind of revealed how the team plans to use him this week against the Titans.
Yeah, he kind of talked about being involved in the passing game package against the Titans, and I think that's exciting. Even if it was a slip up on his part, it's exciting to know Broncos are going to get him involved right away. They're going to make sure that, hey, we added this guy into the Bradley Chubb trade for a reason. They maybe could have got a different draft pick for him, maybe could have told the Dolphins to figure out a different way to clear the cap space. But Chase Edmonds is going to come in, and I think he can help this team, whether that's, on first down plays and really being a catalyst for getting the offense going, or on third downs and really helping the Broncos move the chains, that quick passing game. We need to see more of that, Cody. It was working early on in the season. The Broncos were able to neutralize some kind of aggressiveness from opposing defenses. And that we just haven't seen a ton of that since Javonte Williams' injury. We haven't seen as much or as efficient of a quick passing game to the running backs. I think that's where Chase Edmonds can really help this team. It's going to be weird seeing a running back out there wearing the number 19, but it should be fun. I think the Broncos, it's an exciting opportunity for them to get a good look at a new player who's going to be under contract for next season and somebody that can really help them fix those third down woes right away.
And I think that he gives them a more expansive route tree than maybe anybody else in the Broncos have, right? Because, they'll line Melvin Gordon up on the outside. He'll run a slant. But I think with a guy like Chase Edmonds, you can line him up in the slot and you can run him on drags. You can run him vertically. You can run him on out routes. He offers, I think, a little bit more as a pass catcher that the Broncos simply do not have with Melvin Gordon and Latavius Murray. You thought you have that ability with Mike Boone, but Mike Boone obviously has struggled a little bit with the catching aspect, on passes or routes run past 10 yards. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Maybe he does have this role here, but it's also a little concerning as well, right? You don't want to give away that, okay, hey, if Chase Edmonds is coming to the game, they are passing because that makes it easier for defensive coordinators. So I think that's another test for the Broncos offensive coaching staff. Come in and make sure, hey, even though this guy's in the game, it's not necessarily meaning it's a passing play. Don't give that away. Don't give those tendencies away, because that was something that a lot of teams picked up on. A lot of things have been pinpointed out about how Alberto Cuevunam was used in the first half. Anytime Alberto was in, it was a pass play. He was only in on 2 run plays this entire season so far. So I agree with that. I do think that we will see a little bit more than the swings, the routes to the flat. I think we'll see a little bit more of a creative route tree with the utilization of Chase Edmonds. And I'll touch on Jacob Martin here for a quick moment, Sayre. He was introduced as well. Obviously, grew up here locally in Colorado, went to school at Cherokee Trail, which is just down the road from where I'm currently living. And for him, kind of reflected on just the journey, right? You know, a lot of people are wondering, okay, hey, Bradley Chubb was traded. You were brought in. He was asked, do you have any pressure about that? You know, having these expectations. He says, no, I don't have pressure because I'm confident in my ability and my skills as a football player. I'm excited to see how I can help this defense. I mean, he gave the answer that you wanted to hear from a guy like that. But the real question, I think, is how much will we see him utilize both on defense and special teams with Dwayne Stukes? That, to me, I think will be a bigger question that I look forward to having a little bit more answer from. I'll ask that to Dwayne Stukes this week when we meet with him. Preferably, I think it's going to be a Thursday we'll hear from him. I'll ask him and I'll see exactly what we can get from him as pertains to maybe how he plans to use Jacob Martin. But I can tell you this, Sayre, in person, he's got pretty good size to him. So they'll rely on Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, obviously Jacob Martin, Jonathan Kongbo, if in fact Baron Browning is not able to go this week against the Tennessee Titans on the road in Nashville. I'll be at the game covering the Broncos in Nashville this week. Sayre, I know you got a trip to Disneyland planned out, my man. I hope you enjoy your time there. But one thing is for certain, Broncos country, we hope you enjoy your time with us on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Sayre and I will have you covered every single day, every step of the way leading up to kickoff, including crossover Thursday with Tyler Rowland of the Locked On Titans podcast. We'll preview that matchup and much more here this week on the Locked On Broncos podcast. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of the show.